Our latest staircase project involved using charcoal pavers laid over a concrete foundation. The idea was to create access from the parking space up here where the car is down to this pre-existing deck area.
You come and go like a monsoon rain. You hide and show like a lightning bolt. You have it all.
Pre-existing deck already had a triangular cutout on this corner. We had to make our staircase marry into this. We had to get from the height of the driveway up the top here where the car is down to this pre-existing deck. And due to the height from where the parking space is down to this deck area, it worked out to be 640mm steps. We also had some existing utilities in place. Gas and electric lines come underneath into this deck area, underneath the deck. So this triangular platform had to be at this height to allow the existing utilities to pass underneath it. Yesterday I finished the very top platform, and today I was tidying everything up, removing my temporary pathway, adding some gravel around the edges. The customer wanted to plant a garden on either side of the path, so that was part of the design of incorporating a 1500mm wide platform pathway that cascades down to this pre-existing deck. So by balancing all those factors together, this is the design we came up with. So I'm going to take you through the process of our excavation, concrete foundation, and then cladding the staircase in these charcoal pavers. Clearing a path through here to build a temporary access path and stairway. This allows the customer to be able to come and go safely, and also as I'm constructing this, I need to bring my concrete, gravel and materials in. To build our access path, I'll be using my preformed panels to create some stable flat areas for walking on and running my wheelbarrow down. So hopefully by the end of the day, I'm going to have a temporary pathway here and some of these pavers pulled up. This pathway staircase is probably 30 years old and the timbers are all rotting out. It's been a combination of timber and pavers and bricks. So today's job is to build our pathway here.
Yesterday, there was sun and there was rain. Beauty in the mundane. And as the startled our eyes, we let go of disguise. And now there's something in the air, and a sparkly shimmer on our skin, restoring everything within.
That completes our access ramp. Now we're going to start on the demolition of all these pavers.
The old pathway comes apart quite easily. All the timbers are rotted and there's nothing really holding it to the ground. My client wants to use new pavers for this new pathway. The old pavers are still quite useful, so I'm giving them a rough clean up and stacking them off to the side for a future project.
Hand in hand, building castles out of sand, reaching for the grand. As willows align, we lose track of time. Head up high, now we climb.
After removing all the old pavers, I've run into some concrete.
Dreamy, breezy, we go. Easy, easy on our tiptoes.
That's enough for the first day excavation. We'll chip away at this concrete next week.
The concrete I've run into doesn't have any reinforcement steel in it, so it's breaking up relatively easily.
We've made a good start on demolishing the old pathway. My client had the weekend to think about the final design for this layout. And at first she was thinking about putting a ramp in She had some friends over on the weekend and they decided it was going to be too steep. So we're actually going to put a staircase, probably 5 to 7 steps. Nice long broad steps, only 150 high. Anyway, this design change doesn't really affect me that much except for what I'm going to build. So this is the time to change your mind before we start pouring concrete. Because building the staircase or building the ramp, it's kind of the same thing as far as materials and excavation goes. But I will be excavating this slightly differently now that I know that it's a staircase. And the way we go about pouring the concrete and everything will be slightly different. Today's project is to get this lump of old concrete out of our way. It's an old pathway that was laying under the pavers. Luckily there's no steel mesh in it, so it's coming apart pretty easy. Once I've got all this concrete out of the way, we'll get some timbers and levels out and come up with a plan of how the staircase is going to lay out.
Standing underneath the lights, look into each other's eyes. Tired snowflakes are coming down, collapse into water when they hit the ground. I hear the sound of empty streets. Yesterday has gone to sleep, so all that's left is you and me. I can promise you're the only thing I see. Hold my hand and hear the words I say. Close your eyes and let us fade away. Build a secret place for you and me. Let our minds be caught up in a dream.
I often find old concrete paths when I start excavating. Sometimes the concrete's solid with reinforcement, so I leave it in place and pour my new structure over the top of it. But in this case, the concrete's already cracked and doesn't have any reinforcement to hold it together, so it's best to remove it.
A lonely wind is passing by, tries to carry all the whispers that it finds. The walls are listening when we talk, making echoes as we walk. There's no one left but you and me. It's like a made-up place that only we can see. Hold my hand and hear the words I say. Close your eyes and let us fade away.
I need to rough out the dimensions of our pathway, starting by installing a temporary post to help me work out the elevation we need to reach from the deck to the parking space. By suspending a timber rail on our post that runs the length of the entire path, I'll be able to get some accurate measurements to help quantify the materials we're going to need. I'm staking out a 2x4 at the top of the pathway boundary. Then I can set the timber rail level and make an accurate calculation of what the exact elevation drop to the deck will be. By using a clamp on the end of the rail connected to the post, I adjust it up and down until I get the railing plumb and level. I can now get a measurement to get a rough estimation of what our elevation is from the deck to the end of the pathway. I take our height measurement, which in this case was 820mm, and divide it by 150mm stair heights. This gives me the amount of stairs I need to reach this elevation from the deck. At this stage, the numbers are quite rough and we can adjust them as needed to come up with a whole number. So in this case, I've decided to make the elevation 900, so we have an even amount of 150mm stairs. I adjust the timber rail to this new height of 900 and reset the level by adding some blocking under the high end of our pathway. There's room for adjustment on the start of the pathway near the parking space. I double check our rail is completely level and then get a chance to start to visualize how these steps are going to lay out along this path. I create a scale drawing of the pathway. This way I can work out the logistics of all the elements we're going to need to construct it. The drawing shows me the 6 points of elevation to get us from the deck to the parking space. It also calculates the area I'm going to need to cover, which helps me estimate the materials I'll need to order on site to cover the staircase. I transfer the dimensions of the drawing to the ground with strings and stakes. I need an accurate layout for the next stage of excavation as we cut the soil to fit the concrete that we'll be pouring later. The concrete foundation will be the support for the charcoal pavers we'll be gluing on to finish off our staircase. As part of tying in our new structure to the pre-existing structure, I need to incorporate the treated timber retaining wall that borders the deck area. I'm aligning this retaining wall extension so our stairs will be able to sit square on the edge of the existing deck. I'll need to remove some soil to fit the new retaining wall. I'm using my clamp and level to give me an indication of where to start the cut.
Give me tears so I can cry. And give me heart so I don't die. Give me tears so I can cry. And give me heart so I don't die.
I'll be building the extension of the treated timber retaining wall out of the same material that's already in place. My connection into the pre-existing retaining wall needs a 30-degree cut on the new material. Due to the size and dimension of this timber, I'm using a combination of my chop saw and a reciprocating saw to make this cut. I test fit the pieces in place and double check with my set square to make sure we're going to have the 90-degree angle for the stairs. It's easier to pre-assemble these two pieces of treated timber and insert them as one whole unit.
Another rainy afternoon, I don't know what I'm to do. I just miss you more than anything. It's way too quiet in the house. I'm just wasted on the couch, 'cause I don't wanna feel anything. Wish you'd stayed here beside me. This isn't how it's supposed to be. Wish you'd stayed here right with me. I can't shake that feeling that we said goodbye too soon.
With the new retaining wall fitting in place at the correct angle, I attach it to the old retaining wall and add some stakes to secure it in place.
I know the hour's getting late. I shouldn't sit here contemplating. I just can't stop thinking about us. I won't forget a single thing. Drunken nights and Sunday mornings, and how you smile at me. Wish you'd stayed here beside me. This isn't how it's supposed to be. Wish you'd stayed here right with me. I can't shake that feeling that we said goodbye too soon.
With the timber retaining wall in place, I can start the excavation of what will be the first step from the deck on our stairway. To pour concrete in a structure like this, I'm using the dirt as part of the formwork to shape my concrete. So the dirt has to be excavated carefully and specifically. This way I'll end up with the correct thickness of concrete for our foundation.
Stayed here beside me. This isn't how it's supposed to be. Wish you'd stayed here right with me. I can't shake that feeling that we said goodbye too soon.
I'm now ready to start constructing the formwork that'll shape the concrete slab. I start this process by installing heavy timbers along the edge of the deck to establish the height of the first step. This also helps establish the right-hand corner of our stairway, so I can start the construction of the formwork that define the steps that take us up the hill to the parking space. My client had some old post material that'll work well for constructing the edge of the step formwork. I follow my string line to keep the steps straight and double check with my set square to make sure that we're getting the right height as we go up the hill.
You master how to simplify. You turn rain into a blue sky. Oh, when the wind blows and the windows are closing, you let the world know what has been has been. There's no use in looking back, going back, wishing back.
I continue the process of establishing the height of each of our 6 steps as I move up the hillside to the end of the stairway.
Can be romantic, sipping coffee under the apple tree. It's gentle, manly. Well, you're a good man, quite the best man, a real fine man. When the wind blows and the windows are closing, you let the world know that what has been has been. There's no use in looking back, going back, wishing back.
As the timber formwork establishes the step height, I'm able to accurately continue the excavation for the concrete foundation. As I mentioned earlier, I want to be very accurate with how I excavate this soil because it's going to set the depth of the concrete we'll be pouring later.
Turn around and show your face. Let me see parts of you. Oh my, our bodies interlace, slow and easy. And I can reach you from a distance. I can, so beautiful. I can hear you within the silence. Ooh, we will dance away the gloomy days right here. We are silver line, one of a kind, you and me.
So last week we got the outside edge of our staircase completed along here, which sets the profile of the steps. We've got our front edge locked into the deck. We also installed the treated pine timber retaining wall, which is going to define the steps on this side to a certain point, and then we're going to mirror the same form we put on the other side up along this side to create the outer edges of our staircase. But today we just want to lock in this side and put a couple of the cross pieces across to start forming our staircase.
To align the left-hand formwork completely parallel to the right-hand formwork, I'm cutting a spacer that I'll use all the way up the staircase. This will ensure our concrete foundation is completely parallel all the way along the stairs. By securing the spacer to the right-hand formwork, it acts as a guide for the excavation necessary to install our left-hand stair formwork. It's important to keep the spacer completely level so it gives us an accurate width. I now have a guide for where to dig the trench for the formwork. I take a lot of time trying to set accurate marks for where I dig my trench and excavate the soil. It's important to keep the ground as undisturbed as possible. I'm trying to retain the natural compaction of the soil to aid in our foundation. This helps avoid subsidence and the foundation cracking in the future. When I've excavated enough soil and created a flat platform of dirt for our timber, I cut and fit the first piece of formwork that'll create the top half of our staircase. By using the timber spacer and some packers to get it at the right height, I set this piece of formwork in a mirror image of the formwork on the right hand side. After double checking everything with my square and level, I lock this piece of form into place with some heavy timber screws. I'm now ready to set the piece of timber formwork that'll establish the front of the steps, or the riser as we call it. I then repeat the process for the next two forms as they're identical duplicates of this first one.
But there's some words that I just wanna hear you say, to put it all straight before this night turns into day, and then I'm on my way. Yes, I'm on my way.
I now move on to building the forms that'll create the steps that lead up from the deck. I'll be attaching the forms for these two steps to our treated timber retaining wall we constructed earlier. I used my set square and tape measure to pencil out exactly where the framing is going to be attached to the retaining wall. The plan is for this first step to remain completely parallel to the first piece of formwork we attached to the edge of the deck. Due to the length of these steps, I'm having to attach two pieces of timber together. I use a combination of the deck and my spirit level to ensure the formwork comes out dead straight.
You said, let me tell you everything I've seen, the friends I've made, and then you tell me how you've been. Look a little closer, it's been quite some time. You gotta let me know if I'm out of line. But there's some words that I just wanna hear you say, to put it all straight before this night turns into day, and then I'm on my way.
I complete this first step by adding some bracing timbers that are secured to the deck. This is going to help stop the step from bowing out when we fill it with concrete later. I take a measurement of the span we want to cover one last time. I don't have any spare material on site and it's a long way to the timber yard, so I often measure 2 or 3 times before I cut a critical piece of lumber. I've made a slight change for our staircase design for practical reasons. I've changed the riser height of the steps from 150mm to 140mm. This is due to standard material dimensions and it'll avoid a lot of fiddling and cutting of materials later. The framing for our formwork comes in 140mm widths, so this will make it a lot easier for us to build our form for the concrete. The pavers I'll be gluing onto the concrete later also lay out at 140mm step riser without having to trim the paving material. I'm using some temporary scrap timber blocks to help align the end of our step form when we secure it into our treated timber retaining wall. When you drill screws in on a 45-degree angle, it can push things out of alignment. So by using these temporary blocks, it helps keep the timber aligned to our pencil mark. Once I've secured the form in place, I remove these temporary blocks as they'd be in the way of the concrete. Before I secure the other end of our formwork in place, I check it with my level. I do a lot of double checking with my spirit level as I assemble the formwork. It's a lot easier to make adjustments to the timber formwork than to have to adjust the concrete by grinding it later. I add some bracing timbers to the second step, tied into the lower step. This is going to ensure that both steps end up completely parallel to the deck and don't move out of alignment when we pour concrete in them.
Underwater, so far out at sea, there's no cure for what you're telling me, and soon I'm on my way. Yes, I'm on my way.
One of the last things I need to do before we pour concrete into our form is plug a gap we have between the edge of the deck and where our formwork starts. I'm using some of the concrete pieces we removed from the pathway to help fill this void, so our concrete won't spill under the deck when we're pouring it. I'm adding some sand and gravel mix on top of the concrete chunks we added, just to ensure there's no voids for when we pour our concrete later.
We've completed all the formwork for our staircase. Had to add some extra framing here in the middle because these steps are so long. They're almost 4 meters long. And what can happen is when you pour your concrete, the formwork could push out. We'd end up with a bowed step. So by locking these pieces in, it's going to hold it all together and the concrete won't be able to push it out of whack. The flood over the weekend caused a bit of a washout and a void at the very front of our structure right here. So I've added all this concrete and gravel so when we pour our concrete it doesn't spill under the deck in this void that was along here. So that's all nice and solid ready. The next thing I'm going to do is prepare all the reinforcement steel in preparation for our concrete. We're going to be pouring this in 3 pours. The first 2 steps with a sort of overlap to about where I'm sitting. And the next pour would be this triangle I'm sitting in with the next platform step. And the third pour will be the last 2 platform steps.
The main reason I'm breaking this concrete form up into separate pours is the logistics involved in how much concrete I can mix and put into a form properly in one day. By having reinforcement bar set into the concrete and exposed at the end of each pour, we can connect the following pour securely. Using the rebar in this way ensures all the separate concrete pours end up as one homogeneous foundation that will create the support we need for adding our pavers later. The configuration for our reinforcement system for our concrete is to use heavy 12mm rebar as a base and then lay a lighter mesh on top of it. Because this pathway is designed for foot traffic and not vehicles, we can get away with using a much lighter mesh. I use purpose-made plastic supports to hold the 12mm rebar at the right height. I set this up as a support framework to lay the lighter mesh on top. After cutting the mesh to the right size with my grinder, I tie it to the 12mm heavy rebar with wire. This will help hold it in place as we pour concrete into it. One of the important parts of this process is to make sure that all our steel is sitting about halfway in the slab we'll be pouring later. In this case it's a 100mm slab, so I want all the steel sitting about 50mm above the ground.
Cutting grass and chopping wood can be romantic. Sipping coffee under the apple tree is gentle, manly. Well, you're a good man, quite the best man, a real fine man. When the wind blows and the windows are closing, you let the world know that what has been has been.
I give the area we'll be pouring our concrete a light hose down. We want to dampen the soil so the concrete doesn't dry too quickly, and also want to wash out any sawdust or debris that might be in the way of our formwork. To help manage the concrete pour on the lower part of this foundation, I'm putting it in plastic tubs so it's more manageable. Concrete's really heavy, so keeping it portioned out in manageable plastic tubs helps me move it into the corners and through the nooks and crannies of our formwork without putting too much stress on my body. It's important to work and agitate the concrete with my trowel. This helps remove any air pockets that create voids and weaknesses in our foundation. I also periodically tap or hammer the sides of the formwork. This also helps remove all the air from the concrete. I'm using a standard concrete recipe of 6 parts sand and gravel to 1 part Portland cement. This will result in a really strong foundation to support the pavers we'll be sticking on later.
You master how to simplify. You turn rain into a blue sky. When the wind blows and the windows are closing, you let the world know that what has been has been. And there's no use looking
again. Just not unusual around here in Gippsland. Weather comes and goes. It wasn't supposed to rain much today, but anyway.
I had to pause my concrete pour whilst the heaviest part of this rain passed over. Luckily for us, the rain can't really damage our concrete too much because we're sticking pavers on top and we're not trying to have a finished concrete surface. The rain really won't have much effect.
I have seen many places where the beauty never ends. Different cities, friendly faces, and perhaps I'm going back. But I don't have to be chasing every dream that I have. Oh, no. 'Cause the thing is, I've got more love here than I can bear. Ooh. Of all the magic places in the world I've been to, this is where my heart is. Oh, you know it's true. No matter where I go, I'm coming home to you. Been walking down the street so many times, my feet know every brick and stone. Could wear a blindfold. No matter what I do, I'm coming home to you. And I don't know why, don't know why, don't know why I'm always feeling homesick.
With the correct volume of concrete added to our formwork, it's time to add the reinforcing steel. This will provide a secure connection point between the slab we've just poured and the one we'll be pouring on top of it tomorrow. Here I'm making good use of some scrap pieces of heavy mesh I used on a previous job. I set this rebar 50mm lower than the top of the next slab. This way the mesh for the next pour will be supported at the right depth for the concrete. This concludes the first pour of our foundation.
Of all the magic places in the world I've been to, this is where my heart is. Oh, you know it's true. No matter where I go, I'm coming home to you.
I'm splitting the concrete pour into multiple sessions to make it more manageable for one person to get this volume of concrete in the forms. With the first two steps set solid, I'm ready to start preparing for the triangular platform that sits above them. I'm preparing a piece of plastic conduit to use as an ag pipe to help with drainage under this triangular slab. Having small holes in this pipe will help it catch and direct water and pass it under our slab. This will help avoid water erosion and subsidence, which causes cracking in your foundations. Once the pipe's prepared with holes drilled every couple of 100mm all the way along, I dig a shallow trench to set it in and then add sand and gravel on top. This is part of the system that'll help catch water as it wants to travel under our foundation. I complete this process by smoothing out the sand and gravel with my trowel and then compacting it by walking around on top of it. I then smooth it off one last time with my trowel as the concrete will be poured directly over the top of this. We've now created an efficient water evacuation system for under our foundation. Just like we did on the previous concrete pour, we're using a combination of heavy 12mm rebar with lighter mesh on top. With a large flat slab like this, I want to use some structural design for the heavy 12mm rebar. I want to cover all the perimeters of the form and also add some cross pieces that'll create some triangular structure to our layout. This will help the foundation hold together and avoid cracking in the future. I'm tying these new steel elements into the rebar that we set in the previous slab. We set the rebar in the previous slab at a height of 50mm below the surface of our concrete. So by tying my rebar directly to it and using the plastic supports over the sand and gravel, we'll end up with all the steel elements sitting at the appropriate depth inside our concrete slab. The lighter mesh I'm laying over the 12mm rebar is actually a fencing product, but perfectly adequate for a slab that's only going to have foot traffic on it. I set the mesh with a 50mm gap from the edge of our formwork and secure it to the 12mm rebar with wire. This ensures the steel will stay watertight inside the concrete and not rust. It's important to use tie wire to secure the mesh to the rebar, so when we're agitating our concrete, we don't push the steel out of alignment. I cut the last piece of mesh with my grinder in place, as it's an easier and more accurate way to get a correct fit. With all our steel elements secure and fitted in place, I'm ready to pour concrete into this next step. On projects like this that involve a large amount of concrete, I get a gravel and sand premix delivered by truck in the square metre. This is much more economical than using the pre-mixed bags of concrete you get from a hardware store. I then use separate bags of Portland cement to add the binding ingredient that holds all the concrete together. This also allows me to use my own customised formula for the strength of the concrete. In this case, I'm using a 6:1 ratio, which creates a really hard, solid slab. In our first concrete pour, I was using plastic tubs to help manage the concrete, but for this pour, I can pour the concrete directly into my wheelbarrow from the mixer and then dump it into the form. This is an easier and more efficient way of getting the concrete to where we need it. Pushing the steel reinforcement out of alignment, I use pieces of plywood to support the wheelbarrow full of concrete as I dump it into the form. For large flat pours of concrete like this, I use my rake to spread the concrete out. This is also part of the process of constantly agitating your concrete to push the air out of it. The strategy for getting a strong concrete pour in a slab like this is to start the pour in one corner and work your way out, trying to keep a constant wet edge on the concrete mass. Concrete will stiffen quite rapidly, especially on a warm day like today. So by constantly pouring concrete out on the wet edge, we keep it flexible enough to keep pushing it through the steel reinforcement. When the wet concrete starts to get to the edge of our step, I use my trowel to agitate it so I can push it deep into the previous step we poured and make sure we get a really good concrete adhesion from the old concrete onto the new concrete.
Are we just hallucinating now? This is the final I just take a bow. While it all falls apart, guess you can't win them all. Oh no.
When I've added enough volume of concrete to reach the top of our forms, I start the screeding process. I'm using a dead straight piece of framing timber, rubbing it back and forth on the top of the forms to flatten out the concrete. I use my trowel to fill voids as I work the screeder back and forth.
One way, gonna lay down, be still, won't waste another tear. Wait till it disappears.
My final step in each of these separate slabs we're pouring is to set the rebar in the concrete that'll interconnect all these slabs together. I slightly tap the rebar mesh into the wet concrete and seat it 50 mil under the surface of the following slab, just like we did in our first pour. I tidy up any concrete that's spilt over the edge of our step and let this slab set up overnight before we prepare for the following slab we'll pour the next day. With the foundation complete for this triangle platform and the first two steps coming off the deck, we move on to the final 3 square steps that take us up to the driveway. The heavy rain overnight has reminded us while we're putting drainage underneath our foundations. I set up to install an ag pipe under our foundation just like we did on the previous slab. I'm cutting a piece of 40 mil PVC pipe to size, drilling a few holes in it, then trenching it in just before the concrete that we poured yesterday. I'm also adding a thin layer of gravel, which is all part of helping the water move underneath our slab without disturbing it. I then wash the whole area down before we start preparing the reinforcement mesh.
Yesterday, there was sun and there was rain. Beauty in the mundane. And as the light startled our eyes, we let go of disguise. And now there's something in the air and a sparkly shimmer on our skin, restoring everything within. Oh, dreamy, breezy, we go. Easy, easy on our tiptoes, undercover agents of the other, beyond gravel, beyond all.
I've pulled the forms off for the first two steps because I needed to reuse a piece of timber for the very last platform up the top there. It ties into the concrete pour we're going to be doing tomorrow, so we had to get that in place. So that's why I pulled these off. Gave us a chance to check out how our forms come out. We've got the first of the three platforms poured today. I needed to get this one set in place before we pour our next slab tomorrow, because it's going to pour underneath here just like we did this one. We're basically going to repeat the same process 3 times over till we get to the top.
With this last piece of formwork in place, I can make preparations for the final drainage system for the last 2 platforms. There's a lot more water trying to move through this upper part of our staircase, so I'm using larger ag pipe.
Hand in hand, building castles out of sand, reaching for the grand. As willows align, we lose track of time. Head up high, now we climb. Oh, dreamy, breezy, we go.
This should help evacuate all the water that's running down this hill, flooding our job site. This way the water can be caught by the ag pipe and be redirected out here where there's going to be a garden later, so it won't hurt anyone to have the water coming out here.
I come across many different types of soil and ground conditions. In this particular area of South Gippsland, it has a really high rainfall and the soil has a lot of clay content in it. Due to the constant saturation of the soil, it develops little springs through the system. And in this case, we have a small spring of trickling water at the top of our platform staircase. I'm adding a few extra pieces of ag pipe to help capture this water and redirect it out and underneath our foundation. I'm also adding a thick bed of 20mm gravel as part of the system of creating a stable platform for our concrete. By using a sharp, cracked gravel product of all the same size, it creates small air pockets in between the gravel. This is how the water can pass through underneath the concrete without creating any subsidence. After installing all the elements of our drainage system, we can already see a significant amount of water trickling out of the ag pipe on the bottom section. Redirecting this water is also going to help our concrete pour. Having too much water infiltrating the concrete will make for a weak foundation. I'm now ready to start adding the steel reinforcement elements we've been adding to all the slabs.
Now everything that has been don't matter no more. We've earned it. All those whirlwinds can't touch us no more. We've earned it. Everything that has been don't matter no more. We've earned it. All those whirlwinds can't touch us no more. We've earned it.
One of the most important parts about mixing concrete is getting all the ingredients to bind together properly in the mixer. Part of my process to achieve this is to add the sand, gravel and Portland cement slow enough for the mixer to do its work and mix them thoroughly together without getting any dry pockets in the mix. I regularly take a look inside the mixer to make sure I've got a good consistency and add more water when necessary. I also try to keep a consistent amount of material on my shovel so the ratio of the gravel, sand, Portland cement comes out correctly. I add the Portland cement in small quarter shovel loads to give the mixture a chance to bind this in with the sand and gravel. When all the ingredients are mixed through thoroughly, I dump it into my wheelbarrow and add it to our form.
Your eyelids and perfect lips got me rushing pen and I'm so lit. Like lilies you open, the fragrance goes to my head, my darling. I get everything that has been, don't matter no more. We've burned it. All those whirlwinds can't touch us no more. We've earned it. We've earned it. We've been mostly off track and under attack, so we've earned it. Yeah, we've stayed loyal to each other. Now everything that has been don't matter no more. We've burned it. All those whirlwinds can't touch us no more. We've earned it. Everything that has been don't matter no more. We've burned it. All those whirlwinds can't touch us no more. We've earned it.
That concludes the pouring of our concrete foundation.
Come closer, dance for me. Easy, tiger, easy, let your hair down.
Last week we got all that concrete poured all the way through our entire staircase. Today we're going to be ripping out all the timber forms and grinding our concrete down wherever it has any irregular bumps. We had a bit of a doggy paw incident over in this slab. It's not really going to affect what we do because we're sticking pavers right over the top of it. I've already ground off the bumps for this one. I did it whilst the cement was still soft. And when we stick our pavers over the top, it'll be fine. Pulling the formwork off from my concrete is one of my favourite parts of the job because I love looking at how the concrete's turned out.
I start this process at the top of the staircase and work my way down. After removing all the screws on a piece of formwork, I give it a light tap with a hammer that usually releases it from the concrete. I like to clean my formwork up as I go, whilst the concrete's still soft. I'll be reusing these pieces of timber later on another project. By pre-drilling all my screw holes when I constructed the formwork, it makes it easy for the screws to back out during this process. All the screws get recycled for future projects, so I collect them in a container as I remove them. I like to keep a tidy job site as I'm removing my formwork, so I don't create any trip hazards for myself. Sometimes the screw heads get clogged with concrete, so I use another screw with my impact driver to clear out the head, and then the screw can be removed from the form timber. When I pull off the formwork, I get to see how well our concrete pour turned out. Here we can see there's no voids or air bubbles, so we got a good solid pour. The form on the very top of our staircase requires a bit of excavation. I backfilled this formwork with sand and gravel for the process of pouring the concrete. This was to help stop the weight of the concrete pushing the timber out and creating a bow in it. I used my lump hammer and crowbar to pry the forms free, which is why I let the concrete set up over the weekend. I usually like to give the slab at least 48 hours to set completely solid before I start ripping forms out. I want it strong enough to survive the process without chipping and cracking.
9 to 5 was my dad's advice. Don't think twice, I want the luxury life. My beauty can lose it, I'll use it. I'll take
With the formwork out of the way, I can reposition this ag pipe tight up against the concrete. This way there'll be plenty of room for the plants that are going to be here later. I'm digging a trench just deep enough to keep the pipe under the surface of the ground. I'm also extending the ag pipe so it can run all the way down to near the bottom of our staircase. This will help the water we've redirected underneath the slab to leach out evenly into the garden bed. I backfill the trench with some of our leftover concrete, gravel and sand mix. This will work well for allowing the water to seep out and water the garden that'll be here in the future. The final step in preparation before we start sticking our pavers down is to remove any bumps or high points in the concrete. I want the concrete slab as flat as possible when it comes to sticking the pavers down. I do this by using my grinder with a diamond bit and mainly work around where the edges of the formwork were. In the process of pouring the concrete, it's not perfect, so I often end up with high points on the edges of where the formwork and the concrete combine. Checking the concrete form is going to fit the pavers I selected by doing a rough layout of the first 3 steps. I want to make sure the treads and risers fit accurately, but also leave a space for the cement that'll be bonding them to the concrete. I'm trying out different size packers underneath the pavers to simulate the thickness of the mortar we'll be applying later. Using my set square, I double check that the treads are going to have a 30mm overhang on the front of the step. Now that I'm satisfied our formula is going to work out, I start bringing in some of the pavers we're going to need to construct the first 3 steps. I consult my drawing to help me estimate how many pavers I'm going to need and where to stack them. The pavers are really heavy to move around, so I don't want to double handle them and I don't want to put them in the wrong spot so they get in my way. This is where the drawing comes in really handy for working out quantities of material and where we want to stack them. With all our pavers in place, I'm ready to mix our first batch of mortar we'll be sticking them down with. I'm going to be using 2 types of mortar. One's a purpose-made tile cement and the other one is standard brick mortar. I'll be using the tile cement for the first batch. I use this in areas where there's only a small gap between the paver and the concrete foundation. In areas where the mortar gap's going to be wider than 5mm, I use the standard brick mortar mix. I set myself up with all my tools on top of a towel. This way I can catch any spills as they happen. I also keep a bucket of clean water with a sponge in it to clean up any tile cement that gets in the wrong place. I start the process of cladding our charcoal pavers by dry fitting the first 2. As part of the design choice of having an offset brick pattern for our pavers, the first paver on the riser is going to be a half brick. To achieve a really strong bond, I applied tile cement to both surfaces, starting with the concrete foundation and then buttering the back of the charcoal paver. I then place the paver in the correct position and squeeze it in place. I want to put enough pressure on it so some of the tile cement oozes out the side of the paver. I then check with my spirit level that it's sitting perfectly vertical and make any necessary adjustments by tapping it gently with my rubber hammer. When I'm satisfied it's sitting in the correct position, I move on to buttering the next brick in preparation for placement. Because of the decking we're tying our staircase into isn't completely flat and level, I'll be using different size packers underneath the pavers to keep them completely horizontal and flat. I double check this paver sitting completely vertical and then move on to repeat the process all the way along this first step.
I go red when you're sitting nearby. I'm like a young child. Oh, it's silly how time just flies when we play and you hide. You come monsoon rain. You had a show like a lightning bolt. You have it all.
Whilst the tile cement is still soft enough for adjustment, I want to double check this first row is completely flat and horizontal. As I mentioned earlier, the deck isn't completely flat, so I've been compensating for this by adding different size packers underneath the pavers. By laying my long level across the top of this first row, I can see if any of the pavers are out of alignment. I can then make adjustments using my chisel as a lever and adding a different sized packer underneath. It's important to check this before the tile cement becomes completely solid, and then I wouldn't be able to adjust any of these pavers. With everything looking flat and level, I finish off this first row with the last two pavers. I've custom cut the last paver to fit the width of our staircase.
Oh, it's silly how time just flies when we play and you hide. You come and go like a monsoon rain. You had a show like a lightning bolt. You have it all.
After doing one final check with my spirit level, this completes the first row of our paved staircase. I let the tile cement set up solid overnight before we continue by adding the first set of steps tomorrow. It was really important to take my time and get the layout as horizontal, plumb and flat as possible for this first course, as it becomes the foundation layer for the rest of the entire staircase. The next morning, when the ceramicrete tile cement is dry and set solid, I start the process of adding the tread for this first step with the 200 by 400 charcoal pavers, keeping the concrete foundation clean and dampening it with a sponge helps the adhesion of the tile cement. I'm using a packer placed under the back of the tread. This is to help create a very slight slope in the step so water can drain off the step and avoid puddling in the corner. I dry fit the paver on top of the packer and check with my level. When I'm confident I've got the right slope, I start the process of adding the tile cement to the foundation and to the back of the paver. When I've applied enough tile cement to the concrete foundation, I return the packer to its position. This is going to help set the paver on the correct slope we checked earlier. When the back of the paver has its complete coverage of tile cement, I place it on the concrete foundation and squeeze it down over the mortar using my rubber hammer to help seat it in place. I scrape off any excess tile cement with my spatula and clean up any spills with my water and sponge before moving on to prepare for the next paver.
Daydreamer, kidnap me, take me back, all the way back to them days, running around in a gown and a crown, barefoot.
The packers I'm using to create the gradual slope to help the steps be self-draining varies from one paver to the next. There's a slight variation in the thickness of the pavers and also a variation in our concrete foundation. So I take my time and double check with my level to make sure that we're creating a very slight slope, but will avoid any puddling on the steps, which creates staining and discoloring later on. As I mentioned previously, I'm using two different types of mortar to stick our pavers down. When the gap between the paver and the concrete foundation is larger than about 3 mil, I use standard mortar mix. I do this for a couple of reasons. One is the mortar mix is a little stiffer and helps support the paver when you have to use a thicker amount of mortar between the paver and the foundation. And the other is to save money. The mortar mix is about 1/3 of the cost of the tile cement. So for most of the pavers on this project, I'll be sticking them down with mortar mix. The application is the same for both products, making sure I get a really good adhesion on both surfaces adding enough mortar so that when we set the paver in place, some of the material squeezes out the side. This ensures a solid contact between the paver and the foundation.
As a young girl, the fields were mine. We played hide and seek for hours, raised our shadows among the pines.
When I reached the end of this first step, I used my set square to double check the overhang on the front edge and then scribe a cut mark in preparation for my wet saw. After aligning the blade of the wet saw with my pencil mark, I cut the paver in multiple passes, going slightly deeper as I push it back and forth. This ensures a dead straight cut and also helps the diamond blade on the wet saw last longer. I give the cut paver a thorough wash to ensure it's going to adhere to our concrete foundation. I return the paver in place to double check that it's going to fit properly and then mortar it in place the same as we've done with all the pavers.
No mistake ever kept me late. We spent summers catching fireflies and winters on our skates. One big smile across my face. We used to dance our way to church on Sundays. Mama set the pace. Daydreamer, kitten and maid.
With the first step complete, we start on the second step above, keeping a couple of critical things in mind. We want this next row of pavers to stay completely vertical. They also have to stay level, and we want to make sure that we keep the same pattern that we've established in the first row. Our pattern is a classic brick pattern of setting the course of bricks halfway offset from the row below. I double check I'm keeping this consistent with my set square and make adjustments where necessary to keep the next course of bricks exactly halfway set on the course below. The first course of bricks is set up solid enough for me to remove the packers I use to keep them level. I use a lot of packers in a project like this, so I try and recycle as many as possible.
Daydreamer, kitten and maid, have me running around in a gown and a crown, barefoot. Have me running around, dressed in a gown, barefoot.
As we start laying the pavers for the second step, there's a couple of critical things to keep in mind. I want to make sure I'm setting the level of the paver, leaning slightly forward to maintain our rain drainage. I use my set square to check the pavers set square to the foundation. This is important to keep all the pavers in alignment. When the paver is set to the correct level in the dry fitting process, I move my packer out of the way to add the mortar, keeping it parallel to its original position. So once I have the mortar in place, I can return it back to the exact same spot. The size of the packer works as an indicator for how much mortar I want to add underneath the paver. In this case, it's a 3mm packer, so I know I need to add about 4mm of mortar. I always want slightly more mortar than needed, so some of it squeezes out the side of the paver. This helps ensure we don't have any air bubbles or voids compromising our bond to the foundation. This is why I have a packer underneath the paver, so when I set the paver with my rubber hammer, squeezing the mortar out, the paver will maintain the original level we set during the dry fit. When the paver's been tapped down to its correct level, I clean up the excess mortar and double check the square one last time before moving on to the next paver and repeating the process. On setting this next paver, you can see here how I've changed the thickness of the packer to get it to the correct height. I add the mortar in layers to get it to the correct thickness, sitting slightly above the packer. It's also important to have a thorough and complete coverage of mortar on the back of the paver. When I set it in place and squeeze down on the mortar, I can feel it settle on the packer. Then I know it's at the right level. I always do one final check with my level and set square, and then clean up any spills with my sponge and water. When the second step is complete, I reset for the third course of risers. I like to have these set in place so they can set up overnight. so the next day I can put pavers on top of them.
Quiet voices in the night. Time is running out of sight. A lonely wind is passing by. Tries to carry all the whispers that it finds. The walls are listening when we talk, making echoes as we walk. There's no one left but you and me. It's like a made-up place that only we can see. Hold my hand and hear the words I say. Close your eyes and let us fade away. Build a secret place for you and me. Let our minds be caught up in a dream. Standing underneath the lights, look into each other's eyes. There's no one left but you and me. It's like a made-up place that only we can see.
That completes the first stage of our staircase.
Last week we got these first 2 steps secured to our concrete foundation, and today we're going to get started on this triangular area where the staircase turns around for the last 3 platforms. In the process of laying all our pavers on top of each other, things can get a little bit out of alignment. Like these 3 pavers, when I put my level across the top of these bricks, I can see these 3 are sitting about 2 mil lower than the rest. So I've indicated that by marking it out with pencil on the foundation. So when we get to this point, it's a reminder that I need to pack it up a few more extra mil to get a really good, consistent, flat step along here.
I always give the area I'm working on a thorough wash down. It helps the mortar stick to the concrete foundation and also makes it easier to wash off any spills we get on the finished pavers. I'm using a chisel to scrape loose any excess mortar from the course that we laid the previous day. Then I sweep it clean and do one final check with my level and mark out any low areas to assist me when I lay the next course. The triangular platform step we're constructing now starts with the same 200 by 400 pavers on the edge of the step and then transitions into 300 by 300 pavers, which is a pattern we'll be using throughout all the platform steps. I start this next course by dry fitting the paver and using my packers to get it to the right level. Just like we did on the previous steps, we want to create a very slight slope for rain drainage. Once I'm satisfied I have the correct thickness of packers under the paver, I set it in place, and in this case we're using tile cement because there's only a very small gap between the foundation and the paver. When I butter the back of the paver with tile cement or mortar, I'm careful to cover all the way to the edges. I don't want to create any voids or weak points between the bottom of the paver and the top of our concrete foundation. Once I check the front edge overhang is consistent with the formula of our other steps, I clean up the paver and then repeat the process all the way along this top edge.
Another rainy afternoon, I don't know what I'm to do. I just miss you more than anything. It's way too quiet in the house, I'm just wasted on the couch. Guess I don't wanna feel anything. Wish you'd stayed here beside me. This isn't how it's supposed to be. Wish you'd stayed here right with me. I can't shake that feeling that we said goodbye too soon.
With the front edge of the triangle platform complete, I'm changing the dimensions of our pavers to 300 by 300. I spent a bit of time calculating how this new paver dimension would tie into the other pavers while maintaining our offset brick pattern. Here you can see how the packers I used to set the level on the first course extend into the next course. I use this as a guide to know what size packer I'm using on the back of the next paver I'm going to be laying. I then dry fit the paver in place and check it with my level, as I need to maintain a very slight slope for rain drainage. When I'm satisfied it's at the correct level, I remove the paver in preparation for sticking it to the foundation. In this case, we've switched back to normal brick mortar, as it's quite a thick joint between the foundation and the bottom of the paver. I use the thickness of the packers as a guide for how much mortar I need to add. I want to add enough mortar so it's sitting slightly above the packers. That way when I set the paver on the mortar, it will squeeze out the sides. Then I know I've got a really good contact between the paver and the concrete. After cleaning up any excess mortar around the edges of the paver, I move on to dry setting the next one and repeat the whole process.
I know the hour's getting late. I shouldn't sit here contemplating. I just can't stop thinking about us. I won't forget a single thing, from drunken nights to Sunday mornings, and how you smile at me. Wish you'd stayed here beside me. This isn't how it's supposed to be.
After completing the first course of 300 by 300 pavers, I set up for the next course. The layout for this is much simpler, as we're using the classic half offset brick layout. The first paver in this course is going to require a cutout on one of the corners because it ties into the next platform step. I finished the day with the completion of this second 300 by 300 course and set up a temporary barricade so no one accidentally walks on our pathway overnight. This is a really important step, as people can be used to walking through a certain pathway, and if you don't leave some kind of indicator for them to not walk on it, it's likely someone can step on the pavers before they're set properly, which can create a bit of a problem for the next day when we want to continue. The next morning I prepare for the day's paving by cleaning off any excess mortar from the previous day's paving and giving the area a thorough cleaning and wash down.
I remember urban songs, decades old, but it doesn't matter. Stumble across old memories, try to recall before they all shatter. She kept dreaming of the day butterflies survive the wheel, even though she could knock down and never show. Dear Lily, where'd you go? Where's your heart at? Why'd you fall back? Lately your afterglow is shining brighter, waking up an easy air.
I like to do the custom cutting of the pavers in small batches for efficiency. I needed to custom cut one for the beginning of this next course, so I cut all the pavers that I needed to finish the previous courses. Once I finish dry fitting this next paver, I'll cement them all down in one batch. Then I'll be able to start the standard course for the next row.
She kept dreaming of a world big enough for everyone, but she knew it must rain before it rose. She kept dreaming of the day butterflies survive the wheel, even though she could knock down and never show. Dear Lily, where'd you go? Where's your heart at? Why'd you fall back? Lately
regular platform step complete, I let it set up overnight. I need it to be solid enough for me to stand and work on for the next stage of our process. The second half of the platform staircase comprises of 3 identical square platform steps. I'm going to spend some time doing a dry layout on this first square platform step to establish the formula that will repeat throughout the rest of it. I'm starting by doing a dry layout of the first riser. I'm using the same 100 by 200 pavers as we used in the other steps and laying them out in a symmetrical alignment. I use my tape measure to establish the center of the square platform step and lay the pavers out accordingly. One of the less interesting parts of paving is managing the material flow. Pavers are heavy and take a lot of effort to move around. They're also vulnerable to chipping and scratching every time you move them from one place to the next. So for those reasons, I have a strategy for how I arrange my pavers on my job site. The first part of the plan was to get the delivery truck to deposit the pallet of pavers in a convenient place. In this case, I got them close by, but not in the way of my construction. They're also uphill from where I'm working, which makes it easy to transport them downhill in my wheelbarrow. When pavers are new from the factory, they often have little burrs on their corner as part of the moulding process. These little bumps and burrs can push the pavers out of alignment when we're laying them. So I give all the pavers a light rub on their edge as I stack them in preparation for laying. This also gives me a chance to inspect the pavers visually to see if they have any defects or cracks. I can now return to completing the dry layout for the first of these square platform steps. I set the forms for the concrete foundation 1500 millimeters wide with the idea that 5 300mm pavers would fit evenly across the span. After laying them out in place and double checking with my tape measure, I can see that our formula is working perfectly. I want the offset brick pattern between the risers and the first of the treads to match the previous steps we've already created, so I'm penciling out the layout to keep it exact. I reference all my measurements from the center of the step, clearly marking it out with my pencil and writing any measurements I'm going to be needing later on the actual concrete. Once I've checked that everything is square and level, there's one final adjustment I need to make. These risers are sitting about 5mm too high for our formula. I take one of the risers up to the wet saw and cut 5mm off the side of it and then return it in place to check that it's at the right height. I'm going to use a 10mm packer to scribe a mark on the back of the paver, then I can cut it on my wet saw. That way all the pavers will end up 5mm lower and our formula will stay intact. Both end risers are going to be cut out of the 300mm pavers as the stock 200mm pavers aren't wide enough for our coverage. I scribe a mark on the 300mm paver the same as we've done for all the risers, then cut it on the wet saw and return it in place to check it for fit. When I'm satisfied everything's level and flat, I cut the riser for the other side and prepare to cement them all in place.
Cutting grass and chopping wood can be romantic. Sipping coffee under the apple tree is gentlemanly. Well, you're a good man, quite the best man, a real fine man. When the wind blows and the windows are closing,
For this course of risers to set up, I'm going to double back on the lower part of the staircase and finish off a small custom cut piece that needs to be cemented in place. I often leave small pieces like this until later in the project so I can use one of the offcuts of the other pavers to generate the piece I need. This way I don't waste any material. I add black pigment to some of the mortar batches for pavers that might be visually exposed where the mortar joins into the concrete. This way the pigmented mortar invisibly blends into the pavers. One of the advantages of the tile cement over the normal brick mortar is it sets up and stiffens more quickly than the mortar, especially on a warm day like today. So by the time I've finished cementing this piece in place, I'll be ready to start adding the horizontal pavers on the platform step. It's really important to have this first horizontal paver set completely centered and square, so I take the time to dry fit it and mark it out with a pencil, so when I stick it in place with the mortar, I can get it exactly to the mill of the original position. I double check the overhang on the front of the paver is set to our standard, then use my level to confirm that I've got the right size packer underneath the paver. Now I'm ready to stick it in place in the same method we've been using throughout this project.
When the wind blows and the windows are closing, you let the run on that what has been has been. And there's no use in looking back, going back, wishing back. You master how to simplify. You turn rain into a blue sky. Oh, when the wind blows and the windows are closing, you let the world know that what has been has been. And there's no use in looking back, going back, wishing back.
With the horizontal pavers laid for the first of our 3 square platform steps, I'm able to cement the risers in place for the next step in preparation for tomorrow. This way these risers can set up solid, so tomorrow we can lay the horizontal pavers on top of them. In the construction of steps, there's often a lot of materials that have to be placed on top of other materials. So it's important to set up a plan and a goal to have certain materials set in place, so the next day they're ready to have the new materials on top of them. After all the risers are set in place, I double check with my spirit level that they're sitting completely flat on the face. After making some slight adjustments and filling in some voids, I complete the day by rinsing the whole paving area down. Wetting down the pavers we just laid today helps the adhesion to the concrete by helping them dry slowly, which results in a stronger bond between the paver and the concrete foundation. The next morning I remove the temporary barricades and wash the whole area down in preparation for our day's paving. To finish off the platform step we did yesterday, I need to add the 2 corner pieces of the tread either side of the start of the platform. I placed the 200 by 400 paver in the space we left yesterday and scribe it using my spirit level in preparation for cutting it on the wet saw. I'll need to take a break whilst this rain passes over. In the area where I work, we get a lot of sudden rain squalls that blow in off the ocean.
When the wind blows and the windows are closing, you let the world know that what has been has been. And there's no use in looking back, going back, wishing back.
After the rain squall passes, I scribe the 2 pavers we're going to cut in preparation for the wet saw. I make sure I've got a really clear pencil line to help achieve an accurate cut. I operate my wet saw by laying the paver on the rolling platform and aligning it to the blade. I rehearse the cut before the saw's turned on by rolling the paver under the blade and making sure the blade's going to roll exactly along the pencil line. I slowly cut a shallow channel along the pencil line. This helps the water in the wet saw keep the paver wet as we cut it. I go back and forth, slowly cutting deeper into the paver. You have to give the wet saw time to do its job. And if you try and cut too quickly, there won't be enough water in the process, which can overheat the blade and warp it, which makes it difficult to make accurate cuts. Once I've cut a channel about halfway through the paver, I do one final plunge cut, slowly passing the paver under the blade to finish the process off. After thoroughly washing the paver and the wet saw down, I return the paver in position and check it for fit. I can see here that the cut we made matches the edge of the pathway nicely. This completes the first of the 3 square platform steps. There are good reasons why we've chosen to use an offset brick pattern for these pavers. This cascading platform staircase has a couple of difficult transition points. Because of the angle of the pre-existing decking that the staircase has to land on and the parking space it's coming from, it meant that it had to have a corner turning point in the middle of it. This is why I designed this triangular platform step, so this way the 2 staircases could merge in the center of this triangle and help create some kind of flow and harmony in the design. I chose to use 3 different size pavers to achieve this. The large and small rectangle pavers help construct the rises and treads of the staircase, while I used square pavers to fill out the platform part of the pathway. My client had also requested that I keep the step riser as shallow as possible to help create easy access for people with mobility challenges. So with all those parameters to consider, I chose the offset brick pattern as the most practical way to end up with a good looking and secure staircase. The size and dimension of the pavers was chosen to help us facilitate the appropriate step height or riser and tread length of our staircase. By using the combination of 1 by 200 and 200 by 400 pavers, I was able to achieve the type of steps that the client requested.
Back up the drive a bit, could you see what this is? This is a part of it all. Over and over, injustice to injury, this is a part of it all. Could you hike back to it, fight with it, sit with it, this is a part of it all. Ask around, be aware, make peace with what is there.
As preparation for today's session, I'm washing the 300 by 300 pavers I'll be using and stacking them in a convenient place for use later. As I've mentioned many times throughout this process, keeping all our materials and the concrete foundation wet really helps with the bonding of the mortar between the pavers and the concrete. The previous day we set the risers for the next platform step. I need to check that the top of the risers are completely flat for the treads that we'll be adding to them later. Using my spirit level for reference, I can see that there's a few high points on the risers. I correct this by lightly grinding the high points down with my diamond tip disc and my angle grinder. I periodically check with my spirit level to see if I've made them completely flat. It's essential to have these completely flat, as this will determine how flat and plumb the next stair platform is. I take my time with this process, as I have to be careful not to remove too much material and create any low points. When I'm satisfied the risers are completely flat and level, I wash the whole area down again to remove any of the brick dust that could impair our mortar from bonding the pavers to the concrete foundation. I sponge off the excess water so I can create construction lines with my pencil for the layout of the treads on this next platform step. Just like with the previous platform step, I'm setting a center line to lay the treads out on. This will ensure that our layout ends up symmetrical and repeats the design that we established in the previous platform step.
Back up the drive a bit, could you see what this is? This is a part of it all. Over and over, injustice to injury, this is a part of it all. Could you hike back to it, fight with it, sit with it, this is a part of it all.
While these treads set up in place, I'm going to double back to the platform step we did yesterday and cement in the custom cut corner pieces we prepared yesterday. I'm using a black pigment in the mortar to help disguise the joins on the edges of our pathway.
Peel off a layer and breathe. Lift up your head and lead. Count the stars up before you leave. Save a kiss, pretty please. Try to reminisce over me. Know that I will cherish your memories. Oh, I used to see colors, now it's gray. Till I met you at the concert the other day. The whole room lit up with warm, sunny rays. Tonight we'll turn minutes into days, and nothing's gonna make me look away.
With the next row of treads set solid enough to build on, I do the dry layout of the first row of 300 by 300 square pavers. I mark out a center point on the square paver and set it into the center of our platform. After checking that it's completely flat and level and has a slight gradient for our rain runoff, I start adding the other pavers either side of it and check them for level as I put them in place. Because our concrete foundation is relatively flat and level, the size of the packers under these pavers is remaining quite consistent, and in this case it seems to vary between a 5 and a 6 mil packer to keep them all plumb and level. Once all the pavers are in place and level, I do one last double check on the width to make sure we're sticking to the formula of a 1500mm wide pathway. I'm then ready to start the cementing process. You'll notice how I have towels spread out where I'm working. This enables me to place the paver upside down in preparation for laying it, without getting any scratch marks on the top of it. These pavers can scratch easily, and I'm trying to keep a very clean look on the top of our work. The thickness of the packers I'm using to get the pavers level works as my indicator for how much mortar to add. There should be enough for some of the mortar to squeeze out the side of the paver as I hammer the paver down onto the packers. I repeat this process along the first course of our square pavers, then clean up the edges in preparation for the next course.
You said, let me tell you everything I've seen, the friends I've made, and then you tell me how you've been. Look a little closer, it's been quite some time. You gotta let me know if I'm out of line. But there's some words that I just wanna hear you say, to put it all straight before this night turns into day, and then I'm on my way. Yeah. Yes, I'm on my way.
I scribe the 2 corner treads on the front edge of our step in preparation for cutting them on the wet saw. I use a combination of my set square and spirit level to create an accurate cut line that's going to match the side of our pathway. After checking these 2 pieces fit correctly, I go back to working on a small piece I need to add for the triangle platform.
A bit naive and so eager to please. You know I played for love, but it got me on my knees. Now's the time to reap what I've sown. Your words echoing in every single bone. Underwater, so far out at sea, there's no cure for what you're telling me, and soon I'm on my way. Yes, I'm on my way.
I return to the platform step to cement the last 2 courses of the square pavers in place. I'm using standard mortar mix, and I don't have any pigment mixed in with it, as the edge of these pavers will never be seen by the time the garden's planted on either side of our pathway. One of the important parts of the method of applying pavers to the foundation in this process is keeping the mortar soft and pliable. To help achieve this, I only mix small batches of mortar at a time. Once the mortar's been mixed with water, it starts to activate. After a relatively short time, it'll start to set and stiffen. If the mortar's not soft enough, it won't flatten and squeeze out underneath the paver easily. The other important part of the process to keep the mortar soft is keeping everything slightly wet. You'll often see me use my bucket and sponge to slightly dampen down the paver and the concrete foundation before I apply the mortar. This helps slow the stiffening process and ensure we get a really good bond between the paver and the foundation. You can easily tell when you have the right consistency of mortar by the way the paver will squeeze down and settle on top of the packers, with some of the mortar squeezing out the side of the paver. I add the last course of this platform step before we move on to adding the riser, which will complete our day's work. I've been using tile cement instead of mortar to attach the risers with some black pigment mixed in, as the side of the risers are visually exposed. I attach the 100 by 200 risers the same way you might attach tiles to a wall. The principles of getting a good contact and adhesion are the same, making sure you have good coverage of the product on both surfaces and squeezing it tight into place so some of the material squeezes out the side.
Of all the magic places in the world I've been to, this is where my heart is. Oh, you know it's true. No matter where I go, I'm coming home to you. Been walking down the street so many times, my feet know every brick and stone. Could wear a blindfold. No matter what I do, I'm coming home to you.
After letting the risers for the last platform step set up overnight, we prepare for the final day of paving. I remove the temporary barricades and prepare the surface by giving it a thorough sweeping and wash down. It's a critical step in the process. If there's any dust or dirt in between the mortar and the concrete foundation, it'll create weak points in the adhesion of the pavers. As this is the third identical platform step we're constructing, the whole process is becoming quite automatic by now. I'm laying out 5mm packers to lay our treads on as a starting point, and I can adjust them later once I've checked them with my level.
I have seen many places where the beauty never ends. Different cities, friendly faces, and perhaps I'm going back. But I don't have to be chasing every dream that I have. Oh, no. 'Cause the thing is, I've got more love here than I can bear. Ooh. Of all the magic places in the world I've been to, this is where my heart is. Oh, you know it's true. No matter where I go, I'm coming home to you. Been walking down the street so many times, my feet know every brick and stone. Could wear a blindfold. No matter what I do, I'm coming home to you. And I don't know why, don't know why, don't know why I'm always feeling homesick. Oh.
With the 2x400 treads set in place, I moved on to filling out the platform with the 300 by 300 square pavers. There's a number of reasons why I have mixed dimension pavers in these platform steps. The larger 200 by 400 pavers we use for the treads match a human foot size, because a normal step is around 350mm deep. And because I used them in the lower part of the staircase coming off the deck, I wanted to repeat the same pavers throughout the pathway to help tie it together from a design point of view. And from a safety point of view, a platform step should have some kind of a design change or indicator for the front edge of the step where the height changes. If you construct them using the same dimension paver all the way to the front edge, it can make the transition of the step somewhat invisible, which can create a dangerous trip hazard. So by having these larger pavers on the front edge of the step, it's an indicator to people when they're walking on the path that there's a level change at that point. After cutting and fitting the last 2 corner pieces, I cement the final course of our pathway in place. Our platform staircase, clad with charcoal pavers over a concrete foundation. If you enjoyed watching this series, you might want to check out my YouTube channel for other backyard landscape projects.